Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week. Today, we are looking at what everyone tells me was the most feared and most active two football mobs in Scotland when FV was at its height. Hibs and Aberdeen. Both highly rated, there has been lots of battles between the two over the years, so we will look at those incidents, and we will also look at the point of view firsthand by top lads from both Aberdeen and Hibs as they tell us stories and give first-hand accounts of the fights and what it was like to be running with an active firm at the time. Let's start with the point of view from Aberdeen. In the season 84-85, we travelled in good numbers to one of our more promising encounters, Hibs and Easter Road. For years there has been good, solid fighting before and after Hibs games in Edinburgh. Usually we get an early train, drink in Rose Street bars and then make our way to Easter Road just after 2 p.m. via the St James's shopping centre. We usually meet some opposition in the centre, and I clearly remember a running battle in the tunnel 2 years previous when a skinhead started swinging around a chain with a small spiked metal ball on the end. One of the top boys at the time got a nasty gash in the back of his head. On this Saturday, there were about 350 to 400 of us, and it was a miserable, rainy day. We had a couple of beers and then set off for the match. We hadn't managed to get a fight yet, probably. The rain had put a damper on people's aggression. We were nearly in London Road when people in cars started shouting out of their windows that the game was off, and after the fourth or fifth confirmation, we turned round and headed into town in disgust. Thank God I had brought a brolly. It was really raining now. We went back to Waverley Station and were seriously considering what to do. It was suggested that we go to a Motherwell game, or that we go to Dundee for a match. Nobody wanted to go home. Everyone wanted their Saturday ration of violence and excitement. To everyone's sheer delight, Hibs made an appearance. They ran in the side entrance, which is a bridge over the southbound track. All they did was shout a few mouthfuls of abuse, and then ran away as the police, who were in the station in large numbers at the time, all ran to the bottom of the stairs to the bridge. We turned from the bridge and charged out of the main entrance, and when we got out of the station, Hibs' boys were just up the road on Princes Street. There were only about 50 of them, but we knew they would grow in numbers. They had got quite a distance in front of us, but we kept on running. We ran across Princes Street and down a side street. Soon we realised that our mob had dropped to about 40 boys. Most of the rest had stopped, either because they were knackered or because they were forced to by police on Princes Street and sent back to the station. Just as it seemed we would lose them, we turned a corner to a hail of stones. The Hibs boys had come over a handy area of roadworks where they picked up plenty of ammunition, bits of tar and stones. We dodged the stones for a while, but I knew that if we made a move, they would run. After a few more stones had landed, and there was a small gap, I shouted, "Come on then, Reds!" and, face down, ran towards the stone throwers. With a huge cheer, the lads ran right behind me, and as expected, the Hibs dropped their stones and ran. Soon, we came on to a larger main road, and we could see that Hibs had gathered themselves together and now had about 65 to 85 lads. We were reduced, and most of them were younger lads. I was seriously wondering if we would be wise to go on, not knowing for certain if I could trust all of them to fight till the end, when one of the boys came up to me and said, "Come on, Jay, everyone are always looking to you. If you say go, all of us go." The Hibs were advancing on us now, and I felt a burst of loyalty to the ASC. I shouted, "Come on then," and another deafening cheer went up. All of us tore across the road towards Hibs. They turned and ran, every one of them. We never caught them. Everyone was chuffed. We ran Hibs. But we were disappointed that we never actually got a fight. Some went home early, but most of the boys stayed in the bars on Rose Street. Being in a different city is a reason to enjoy yourself, and everyone loves being away, though all they do when they are is bum their own city tip to everyone and tell them how brilliant it is to live there. We got the train around 6 p.m, all pretty boozy. Some of us wanted to get off in Dundee, but most of the lads by now wanted to get home fed and out for the night. About 30 altogether got off at Dundee, and most went to Jack Daniel's bar quite near the station. Feeling invincible for some reason, we went to Castle Street, where we know a lot of football lads, Dundee and Dundee United, hang about. We went on to Reflections and got some beer down our necks. The place was full of young people dressed and obviously discoing later on. About 8:30 p.m. we started singing, and we weren't holding anything back. We are the Aberdeen Soccer Casuals and we fucking hate Dundee. We got heavy stares, but amazingly nobody was coming up for a go. As we walked out, some guy did pull up Paul, and Paul hit him with, "If you're worried, you juke bastard, get outside now." The guy backed down and we walked back to the station. We still had half an hour to wait for our train, so we sat in the rail bar for yet another pint. We walked out of the centre at the bus depot door, and there, to our great joy, were the stone throwers. There were only about 6 of them, and we chased them along the station. So stupidly 2 of them ran into the toilets. Me and Mark ran in after them and gave them the works, punched them to the deck and give them 3 or 4 hard kicks before moving out quick. We went on, and just as we turned the corner onto London Road, bumped into a dozen lads about our age but with scarves on. One of our boys put on a southern Scottish accent and asked, "Have you seen any of those Aberdeen bastards yet?" "No, that's who we're looking for too." Nothing else happened on London Road or Easter Road, and we turned right to go our usual part of the ground. As we passed a corner before the famous narrow bridge we had to cross, we found about a ton of building bricks. We all knew how outnumbered we would be after the game, and so we decided to leave an arsenal of ammunition before the bubble burst on Easter Road. Fans are always segregated after the game as far as Easter Road, where they usually clash. We picked up a couple of bricks and smacked them in half on the pavement curb. They could do a bit of damage after the match. We got to the ground and saw what we expected. Only a few hundred scarfers and about 10 southern Aberdeen casuals. The Hibs fans looked happy to see us. They knew we didn't have enough boys down. We knew we were the top boys and that we'd give them a hell of a run for their money. After the game we left, tensed up and all ready for anything. A few of the boys, mainly the southerners, simply couldn't face the odds that we were about to face and drifted away from us. There were about 25 of us now, crossing the narrow bridge. All our half bricks were gone when we got to the corner. Someone must have seen them and shifted them. We were now on the road leading to Easter Road, and though we had no weapons, we were still going for it. We could see that Easter Road was absolutely solid. Hundreds of fans were moving up it. A lot of those hundreds were just honest football supporters of Hibs, but about 50 yards from Easter Road, we saw their boys. With Hibs just turning trendy, they had only about 50 casuals, but they had about 250 punks, skinheads, and guys just choking for a fight. As soon as Ray saw them, he was off his mark, running towards them, though our number was down to 20 now. We charged, screaming, "Come on, you bastards!" The Hibs mob were so surprised that they actually started backing off. I saw Ray and Mark wading into a section of their boys, and we all followed suit. There was plenty to aim at. Mark, who had borrowed my brolly, was whacking into some skinheads when the police lifted him. After some mental battling, we regrouped at the start of London Road. Just as we started to walk up there, Hibs mob, organised at last, came round the corner. I saw about 200 of them running towards us. I had on a grey Lacoste jacket, and I heard someone shout, "Get him in the grey, get him, kill him." I tried to move against the wall at the side of the road, but a punch caught me, and then I was thumped against a car. The sheer weight was too much, and I fell down beside the wheel of the car. I felt all the boots coming in, which nearly knocked me out. Then I remember through the blurred vision seeing a copper and Jim, who held me up against the car and asked if I was all right. I think my head was booted against the car and the bang concussed me. I came to quite quickly and started to walk again. The police arrested quite a few Hibs in that fight, and quite a few of us got a kicking. We regrouped as best we could, about 17 or 18 of us, and made our way up London Road. We got our unity and strength back, and with no coppers around, started running up the road. Hibs boys, thinking it was all over, were straggling behind their mob, and we punched, butted and booted at every chance. Just before Waverley we noticed a group of about 30 boys. We charged at them. They backed off at first. They kept their distance but slagged us for a few minutes. Then when they had a few more boys, about 40 altogether, they came ahead. It turned into a running battle, with not much actual fighting. Traffic cones and bottles were the main weapons. After about 5 minutes the police finally arrived and sent us into the station. We went into the rail bar, and you wouldn't believe the scene. Although most of us were cut, bruised and sore, we were handshaking and hugging each other. We did our city proud. We did it for Aberdeen. You would have thought we had just won an Olympic gold for our country in a relay race. The Aberdeen lads have more stories to tell about clashes with Hibs, and we will jump back to them. But first, let's listen to what Hibs have to say in response, and then we will switch back to Aberdeen. Everything you are about to hear is from top Hibs lads. One cowardly incident apart, I have always respected Aberdeen as a mob. They were like us in so many ways, local guys who supported their local team, and unlike the Neanderthals who follow the old firm, there was never any hint of religious bigotry. As a general rule, an Aberdeen boy, like us, did not need a weapon in his hand to get it on. That was very much my attitude. Unless you were badly outnumbered, or the opposition pulled a knife, you should rely on fists, feet and head. In Scotland, at least the Aberdeen Soccer Casuals, ASC, were trailblazers for the whole casual movement. The story goes that during the home leg of a European Cup tie against Liverpool in October 1980, some Aberdeen fans observed that a number of their Scouse visitors were wearing designer trackies and expensive trainers. These boys must have seemed so cool compared to the Scarfers with their fuddy-duddy Christmas tree look. Inspired by their trendy guests, the ASC was born. I first became aware of Aberdeen in the year 1983. Their fledgling mob had gone into the Motherwell end at Fir Park, started a fight and given the home fans quite a kicking. The media lapped it up, describing it as a new phenomenon and noting that the Aberdeen boys were togged out in expensive designer gear. I was still a skinhead, but I was excited by what had happened at Fir Park, just like the Aberdeen boys had been inspired by the Liverpool Casuals a few years earlier. I wasn't the only one. Many of my mates felt the same way. It was around that time we evolved into Casuals, and that the CCS was born. Given that ASC was Scotland's only real mob in those days, it is not surprising that our first large-scale battle, if you exclude an earlier kicking they gave us at Kirkcaldy, was against them. What we didn't realise at the time was that it was very nearly our last. The date was the 23rd of March 1985. The place was Easter Road. We had a burning desire to be Casuals, to be respected, to be feared like the ASC. And as we gathered in the Royal Nip, our spiritual home, that Saturday afternoon we were ready to face them. At least we thought we were ready. The reality was that we didn't have a clue about how to go about it. Uncle Dougie's soccer hooligans had been a lark. Yes, we got into a few tumbles with other gangs, but that was strictly small time, almost innocent. We were now going from the 3rd Division to the Premiership. We were also heavily outnumbered. Aberdeen brought around 500 boys that day, a lot of them hardened hooligans with many scalps to their name. The CCS, by contrast, could only muster about 50. It was a recipe for disaster. Within minutes of leaving the Royal Nip, we saw the ASC. After a few minutes warily eyeing each other up, we blinked first and, like headless chickens, steamed in. At first, they were taken aback and retreated, But when they realised how few of us there were, they counter-attacked and swarmed all over us. I had no option but to backtrack, like the rest of our boys. Knowing the area like the back of my hand was a big advantage, and I got away, embarrassed by the humiliation of having to run on my own patch. I was unscathed, but one of my mates wasn't so lucky. Rami Morel was in the thick of the action, but he too was forced to turn tail. Before he did, in act of defiance, he picked up a traffic cone and hurled it at Aberdeen. Then as he tried to get away, he stumbled and fell to the ground. The ASC were on him in a flash, kicking and punching for all they were worth. I didn't see what happened, but it seems that dozens of them, driven by the bloodlust of the mob, piled in. Rami was seriously injured. He took many blows to the body and, more worryingly, to the head. He could easily have been killed. It was a disgusting, cowardly act, perhaps not typical of Aberdeen, but a liberty nonetheless. Inside Easter Road, the rumours spread like wildfire. Rami was in a coma. Rami had brain damage. Rami was dead. Understandably, the atmosphere was poisonous, and it wasn't helped by the ASC, who were cock-a-hoop at their exploits. They taunted us, pointing out correctly that we had run away. We were raging, as were the vast majority of Hibs fans, so their fans, scarfers included, were pelted with stones and coins throughout the match, while the Aberdeen players got the same treatment. One of the linesmen was unlucky enough to be in the firing line, and he was hit on the head with a stone, at which point the referee was forced to stop the game and to take the players off the field until order was restored. After the game, the coppers, fearing a bloodbath, surrounded the ASC. We did our best to get at them, tracking them all the way to Waverley Station, but all we had to show for our efforts was battering a few stragglers who we trapped on a walkway. It wasn't nearly enough. That night in the pub, we were deflated not just by the rout, but also by the manner of it. We had been naive and amateurish, and had deserved all we got. After a couple of hours of feeling sorry for ourselves, our thoughts turned to revenge. There would be a day of reckoning, and it would come at the next Hibs Aberdeen match, where this time we would make home advantage pay. Although that fixture would not take place for months, in October 1985, what happened that day was never far from our minds. In the meantime, Aberdeen did their level best to keep the fires burning. The ASC insisted on bragging about nearly killing Rami at every ground they visited. The sick individuals even composed a little ditty, which they sang to the tune of 99 Red Balloons by Nana, 99 big soccer reds, bouncing on poor Rami's head, fucking comedians. In the book, written by former ASC member J. Allan Bloody Casuals, Diary of a Football Hooligan, 1989, the author states, "Thank God, Rami, didn't die. Nobody, at least nobody I know, wants to kill. It's just a game." Fair enough, Jay, but a lot of your mates obviously didn't feel the same way. If they were genuinely concerned about Rami, why did they write a song about what they had done and then belt it out at every ground in Scotland? Not much sign of remorse there. They say that every cloud has a silver lining, and the attack on Rami Morel is proof of that. As the game with Aberdeen approached, we were inundated. It seemed that every other Hibs fan wanted to join the CCS, even if it was just for one day. They came from all over Edinburgh and beyond. Even the Rajes from Nidri pledged their allegiance to the cause. With reinforcements and a clear strategy, we knew it would be a different story this time. But little did we know, it would be a day that changed football hooliganism in Scotland forever. It is hard to convey how strongly we felt about righting that wrong. It was an obsession that bordered on fanaticism. One of our mates had been left for dead, and his assailants had the brass neck to brag about it to all and sundry. The gap between the two games also stoked the flames. It gave us ample time to brood on our inadequacies. Aberdeen had been right about one thing. We did run away, and that was the hardest thing of all to accept. Something special was called for. Something that would do more than just wipe the slate clean, a disproportionate response. I don't know who it was that came up with the idea of petrol bombing the cunts, but I thought it was a stroke of genius. And I didn't hear any dissenting voices. We all loved the idea. Those sheep-shagging bastards had to be taught a lesson they would never forget. On the day of the game, we decided to keep our powder dry until after the match. We were about to try something spectacular, and we hoped it would lull Aberdeen and the old Bill into a false sense of security. There was the usual banter inside the stadium, including many renditions of 99 Soccer Reds from the ASC. Ramey was there, and it must have brought back some pretty grim memories for him. But apart from the usual pleasantries, nothing went off. It was a different story after the game. We had concealed ourselves in every vantage point we could find, and when Aberdeen reached London Road, we attacked. Only this time we were smarter. Instead of steaming into the head of their mob, where the top boys were waiting, we ran into the middle, where the less confident guys tended to position themselves. It not only confused them, but also stopped their vanguard from building up a head of steam. Another important difference was that we were well mobbed up with, I estimate, about 500 boys. The battle raged all the way back to Waverley, with the two sides going at it hammer and tongs. A building site was raided, and we launched into each other with bricks, scaffolding poles and pieces of wood. Both mobs had, by this time, split into two groups, and we forced one lot of ASC to retreat into the station through the side entrance. We then turned our attention to the other side of Princes Street, where the rest of their mob was preparing to take on the other group of CCS. Hostilities recommenced, with neither side prepared to back off. Meanwhile, the ASC who had been run into the station had not boarded a train for Aberdeen as we hoped. Looking to get back into the fight, they came straight up the ramp at the front entrance to Waverley and reappeared on Princes Street. This was going to be a long, gruelling battle. It was time to play our joker. One of the Hibs baby crew took the bull by the horns, or should I say, the bottle by the neck. He lit the rag and hurled that fucker right into a group of Aberdeen boys. I watched open-mouthed as a Molotov cocktail flew through the air and smashed onto the pavement outside the Wimpy bar. Flames erupted, scattering not only the ASC, but also crowds of passers-by who go the fright of their lives. There was chaos. Dozens of people spilled onto Princes Street. Women were crying, children screaming. Their boys, not knowing if we had more bombs, ran for their lives. I also legged it, ending up in St Andrew's Square, where the police stopped me and some other CCS. They sniffed our arms for petrol, found nothing, and sent us on our way. The operation then took what could have been an even more dangerous turn. After the cops had let me go, I made immediately for Princes Street Gardens with a POW. We had hidden a stash of petrol bombs alongside the railway line. Our plan was to smash the windows of Aberdeen's train and throw the bombs right into the carriages. If we had succeeded, there would have been serious injuries to dozens, perhaps hundreds, of people. I can't guarantee that innocent passengers would not have been hurt, but that wasn't our intention. It was strictly personal between us and the ASC. Some people will take the view that what we planned to do was extreme, but it shows how bent on revenge we were. But, as they say, the best laid plans. When we got to our cache, we discovered that the cops must have got there first and taken the petrol bombs away. Then we were stopped by two of Edinburgh's finest, who asked us what we were doing there and why our hands were so dirty. They thought it was from handling petrol, but we told them they got that way because we had jumped over the turnstiles and they let us go. In the pub that night we were ecstatic, wired to the moon. Where Aberdeen were concerned, we had got our own back in the most spectacular way possible. The only cloud on the horizon was that the cops arrested the baby crew member who had thrown the bomb, but, fortunately, he was found either not guilty or not proven at his trial and walked free from the court. There was also an important spin-off from the afternoon's events. As a mob, the CCS had been strengthened because many of the boys who had fronted up for the ASC had had their appetites whetted and wanted more. And, more importantly, We had put down a marker to every other mob in Scotland and beyond. We were prepared to do whatever it took to win. There would be no stopping us now. Although we were now well on the way to being number one in Scotland, Aberdeen were and would remain the best of the rest. They tried to get back at us in November 1985 at Hampton, just a few weeks after the petrol bomb incident, when the two clubs met in the League Cup final. There were about 600 on each side that day, and it would have been one of the biggest battles in hooligan history. The only problem was the Glasgow police got a firm handle on the situation and kept the two mobs apart. Aberdeen tried again at Easter Road in January 1986. The main part of the away end, at that time open terracing, was closed due to heavy snow, and so Aberdeen were herded into the standing enclosure. We saw an opportunity and began to pile into the enclosure. Although about 20 made it, the cops, hearing our accents, soon got wise to the ploy and refused to let any more of us in. But there were still enough CCS to cause a problem. It kicked off from a quite unexpected source. Someone ran out from the Aberdeen group and shouted, "I am Crazy Legs, I am Millwall." Not to be outdone, Sean Welsh replied, "I am Sean Welsh, I am Hibs." With that, Sean punched Crazy Legs full in the kisser, which sparked off a short but quite satisfying fight that ended with the Bizzies throwing everyone with an Edinburgh accent out of the enclosure. We had many a memorable set too with them, none more thrilling than in Dundee before a Scottish Cup semi-final on the 5th of April 1986. We took about 300 to the game, and I think Aberdeen had about the same. We had missed each other at the railway station, by accident not design, but after that there were running battles all over Dundee city centre as the two mobs fragmented into smaller groups. I remember battling in pubs, in shops, and in the middle of the road. I ended up in a children's play park, in a quite superb 50-a-side confrontation. It was just two great mobs going at it with no quarter, either asked for or granted. To me, it was one of the best days in the annals of hooliganism, a true clash of the titans. Aberdeen considered themselves invulnerable at home, but we more than held our own up there. In November 1987, we went up to theirs for a midweek game with an evening kick-off. The buses were parked near to a funfair, and we walked to the top of the hill that overlooks the stadium. When the ASC spotted us, we charged. It was a particularly intense fight, with a few dozen on each side. I certainly remember landing many punches and kicks, although we did not, as a general rule, carry knives. One ASC fighter was stabbed by one of our lot, a boy we had nicknamed Dodgy D. I am led to believe that the Aberdeen casual only survived because he was wearing several layers of clothing. Dodgy D was wearing a black leather jacket that night, so the bill arrested every Hibs boy who happened to be wearing one, but they got no joy. The next week, the Aberdeen police turned up at Easter Road, determined to catch the guilty party. The cops forced an ASC member who had witnessed the stabbing to go with them, but it was the day that Celtic infamously threw a CS gas canister into the Hibs end, and the place was in uproar. With a major tragedy, a strong possibility, it was neither the time nor the place to look for a suspect. In any event, the Aberdeen lad had no intention of fingering Dodgy D, who is now, sadly, deceased. The Aberdeen cops went home empty-handed. In those days, the mid to late 80s, it seemed that something major went down every time we faced Aberdeen, and another midweek fixture in May 1988, also at their ground, was quite outstanding. We travelled north in a convoy of cars and a minibus. Nothing happened, before or during the game, and after we left the stadium, we headed for a pub in Union Street, Aberdeen's main thoroughfare. We kept our heads down, giving the impression that we were just a group of lads out for a quiet drink. Our reasoning was that the cops would think we had called it a night and headed back to Edinburgh. If it worked, it meant we could attack Aberdeen without being rudely interrupted. After an hour or so, we ventured out, got into our vehicles and went looking for the ASC. We knew they frequented a pub just off Union Street, and sure enough, the boys in the minibus, which had got separated from the cars, saw a couple of their boys going into the pub. Bingo. But our minibus had been spotted, and they immediately put two and two together. Their whole crew rushed out of the pub and helped themselves to bricks, metal poles and lumps of wood from a builder's skip. Seeing only the lads in the minibus, the ASC thought they were on to a winner. A volley of bricks and, strangely enough, a sandwich board was launched at the minibus and shattered the windscreen. The CCS boys jumped out, and although they were heavily outnumbered, immediately ran towards Aberdeen. Then about 30 seconds later, the cars arrived with passengers that included Gervin, Kev Wood, Mikey Neri, Horan and me. The minibus contingent included Taylor, Bobby Lipscomb and Keek, all game boys. As usual, we weren't tooled up, but when we saw what Aberdeen were holding, we realised immediately that we had to fight fire with fire. The car boots were opened and we armed ourselves with hammers, screwdrivers, wheeljacks and torches. What followed was brutal, and I have to say that we ran riot. The ASC seemed to go into a state of shock when the cars pulled up and they never recovered. I had a black pudding, a long maglite torch, and I well remember laying into one of their boys in a shop doorway. I bet he had a sore head in the morning. Let's switch back to Aberdeen, as they have a little more to say about Hibs, and haven't finished yet. The following words and accounts are all from ASC. Another memorable battle with Hibs was staged in the year 1985. The match was in Edinburgh again, and we had a good firm of about 400 with us. There had been no opposition all the way to London Road, and by the time we turned into Easter Road, I was quite far back in the mob. The leaders of the mob were about 50 yards in front, and not long after I was on Easter Road, the action started. Hibs Casuals, now totalling 250 or 300 at most, had been waiting for us, and were now making their move. I saw a few bottles and traffic cones in the air, and, as everyone else did, I tore down the road towards them. When I got down to the action, there was a bit of a stalemate, a sort of no man's land where bottles, cones and their odd punches flew. Me and Glennie and Gory made a definite run right into the middle of their mob and started whacking everything. Aberdeen surged forward, and that was it. I didn't see it, but one of the Hibs mob threw a bottle just before running, but was tripped up trying to escape. He was severely kicked on the ground and had to be taken to intensive care. He was in a critical condition. Thank God he didn't die. Nobody, at least nobody I know, wants to kill. It's just a game. A few stitches, a few scars, fair enough. But death, that's a different story. I know that if someone was killed, most would stop immediately. Just a few minutes on Easter Road, and a few side roads as well. I was well back with a few other lads, knackered and fed up of running. Suddenly, a bar diagonally across the road emptied, and about 20-odd big scarfers ran out at us. There were only about 7 or 8 of us at the time, but we went onto the road and met them. This was a really violent clash. Heads were getting thumped, butted, and booted. I never saw it coming, but as I was fighting off a couple of Hibs, another one swung a wire shopping basket into my face, and one felt my face tear. Ray ran into the man, and I backed off to the pavement, knowing my face was in a mess. There must have been a wire sticking out which tore my face. I got a deep gouge just below my left eye, and a gouge out of the top of my nose. The fight was calmed down by the police when they eventually arrived. I asked one of the policemen if I could get an ambulance, but the answer was, "No effing chance, lad." The fighting was over, and we were escorted to the ground. Inside, I went to the first aid and had an antiseptic dressing put on my face and nose. As I walked out of the dugout area underneath the stand, the Hibs support cheered my injury. I simply smiled and waved. I wanted to get over that fence into them, but I could wait. The doctor had suggested I go to hospital for stitching, but I so terribly stupidly watched the match deciding to go to casualty and emergency in Aberdeen. I knew everyone there and would feel more at home. I didn't half feel like an idiot when they told me that the loose skin on my cheek had died and they'd have to cut it off. I hadn't realised skin died so quickly. It was a mess, and they couldn't even stitch it at all. I believe the scar on my nose will almost disappear, but the scar below my eye will be with me for as long as I live. Scarred for life myself, and knowing that someone was nearly killed, you would think I'd been affected. But no, next Saturday I was there, as was everyone else. Now, back to Hibs with their closing statement about Aberdeen. The following is all the words of Hibs lads. These are only a few of the scraps we had with Aberdeen. In fact, we have probably fought them more than any other mob in Scotland, with both sides winning and losing their fair share. That is no doubt why I got to know so many of their top guys so well, guys like Ray, Monkey and Weg. I respect them. They are all good, honest boys who would rather throw a punch than pull a knife. We became so close that we even ended up helping each other out. One time Ray and a few of the ASC were in Edinburgh for a trial in the Sheriff Court. We heard about it and decided to look for them at Waverley. It wasn't a social call, we had mayhem on our minds. But when we got there, we discovered that Ray's pals had caught an earlier train and he was alone in the station. Apart from liking the guy, I felt it was cowardly for a mob to attack someone who was on his own. I persuaded my pals to let him go on his way unmolested. He later returned the favour when I was on up a charge in Aberdeen Sheriff Court. Helping out the members of another mob is considered heresy by some of my CCS colleagues. I like to think of it as professional courtesy. Nowadays I talk regularly to current and former ASC members on the phone, reminiscing, recalling shared memories, getting nostalgic. I know that they, like me, would give anything for the great days to come back, for us to be going toe-to-toe outside their ground or chasing each other down Easter Road. We have listened to proper boys from both Hibs and Aberdeen, and it's obvious to me that there is a mutual respect there. Now, I will conclude. By the late 90s, the violence didn't stop, but it evolved, moved off-grid, out of sight, and into the underworld. These weren't chance encounters anymore. These were pre-arranged meets, organised, fair, deadly, 10v10, no bottles, no knives, no running, just fists, reputation, and pride. Despite the bloodshed, a strange sense of mutual respect grew. Our SC and CCS were cut from the same cloth. Stylish, disciplined, loyal, deadly. Even the police began tracking them like organised crime networks. They weren't just hooligans, they were legends. To some, May 2016. Hibs win the Scottish Cup. History made, celebrations erupt, but beneath the glory came something darker. Rangers fans stormed the pitch. Fights broke out, the cameras rolled, but in the pubs and alleys of Edinburgh, whispers began. Aberdeen lads, allegedly ASC, were in town. Old scores, old grudges, never truly settled. Fights broke out in pubs. One bouncer swore he saw two mobs scrap in the shadows. But nothing was confirmed. No official arrests. Just echoes of war. The stories are still there, burned into memory. We were 30, they had 80. Didn't matter. Aberdeen. That's the one mob we never backed down from. These weren't internet tough guys. These were veterans. Men who lived it, breathed it, survived it. Today, it's different. The firms are older, some retired, some not. But the fire? Still there. The rivalry? Still fierce. And every season, when Hibs versus Aberdeen appears on the fixture list, that date gets circled in red. Can I just say a big thank you and respect to both Allan and Andy Blance. Facts and accounts for today's video was taken from the highly rated excellent books Hibs Boy, The Life and Violent Times of Scotland's most notorious football hooligan by Andy Blance, and also Bloody Casuals, The Diary of a Football Hooligan by J. Allan. I have only read out brief parts of a chapter in each book, so you can imagine how good the rest of the books are, full of great stories of battles with different firms in Scotland, England, and the international scene. I own both books. They are a must-read for anyone interested in football casual scene. If they wasn't good books, I wouldn't have chosen to make a video about them or be recommending them to you lads. I will leave a link in the description, just click on it and it will take you straight to the books if you wish to purchase them. Thank you boys, God bless and see you next time. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you subscribe, you will be notified when we release a new video. It could be your firm we make a video about next, so don't miss out and hit the subscribe button. You can find me on Facebook or email me if you have a good story to tell. See you next time.